Hello and welcome to the Minnesota Røkkr Home Series pre-show. A little pre-show, get you a little bit informed and hyped up for the weekend here. I'm Ashley, aka Minette. I'm here with Doug. Doug, how are you doing?
Ashley, I'm doing so well. Thank you for having me on the show. It's always a pleasure to share the mic with you.
Yes, absolutely. It's been good times. We've had great times in the Discord watch parties with Doug. Doug's hosted a few Minnesota Røkkr events that we've had, so it's great to kind of collaborate and talk about the weekend with you guys. So obviously, Minnesota Røkkr, we're hosting the home series this weekend. This is actually our second home series or event that we're hosting this year. We hosted launch event weekend in person at the Armory, and then obviously with everything going on this year, 2020 has been crazy. The CDL has moved to online play, so we're remote, but the matches are still happening from home, which is amazing. And this weekend we're actually hosting another tournament, and obviously it goes without saying, but still want to make sure that we bring it up here. This weekend, the Minnesota Røkkr Home Series is in honor of George Floyd. We'll be raising money to stop police brutality and support the rebuilding efforts in devastated areas of Minneapolis and St. Paul. If you'd like more information about the campaigns or donating, please head to rokkr.gg/donate to learn more about Campaign Zero and the local groups that the donations this weekend will be raising will support. There's also a list of social justice organizations that you can help on local or national level should you wish to make a contribution. And again, that's rokkr.gg/donate. I'm more than proud to be a part of this organization. We're focused on fundraising this weekend as well as hosting our event and making sure that we can get hype about Call of Duty, hang out, watch the matches this weekend. I mean, we're going to talk about it. It's full of bangers. The banger matches are going to happen. Super stoked for that, but also super proud to be coming together as a community and raising money for a great cause. Doug, give us a little bit of an idea just how epic this weekend is in terms of what the schedule or the bracket, the groups are. This event is the most stacked event of the year so far.
Yeah, you called them bangers, and I think bangers is a very appropriate description. If you guys have not looked at the groups or haven't looked at the brackets, I'll let you in on a little secret. The top 5 teams in the league are all playing this weekend, and 3 of those 5 are in one group, which is just absolutely bonkers.
Minnesota Røkkr's group.
Yeah, the first group has Seattle, Atlanta, and then Minnesota and Dallas. And then the next group has the LA Gorillas, Toronto Ultras, Chicago, and then the Florida Mutineers as well. So this tournament is stacked. I think, without getting too into the details and any of that quite yet, we're going to learn a lot about a lot of different teams today, or excuse me, this weekend, and particularly out of Minnesota. We'll talk more about what I mean by that later, but this is going to be a very a very strong litmus test for all of these teams.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think what this weekend resembles to me is just a huge shift, right? Like, we're just over halfway through the season here. The standings are nuts. We'll put them on the screen now. You've got, I mean, as Doug said, the top 5 teams in the league are playing this weekend. I believe the Minnesota Røkkr matches up against Dallas Empire right away. That's insane. Mutineers and Huntsmen in the other group there, and Group B is one of the first matchups as well. It's just, we've got just a crazy start. And if you look at the points here, this weekend could dictate a lot. This could change who's in first, who's in fourth, fifth anymore. Like, this changes a lot for a lot of teams here at the top of the leaderboards.
Yeah, and when I look at the standings, I think that if things go like we expect, there might be some shuffling between maybe third and fourth, or maybe fourth and fifth, or something like that. But I think the biggest pitfall potentially will not be who wins, but who fails, right? If you see any of those top 5 teams have an 0-2 weekend, that could be devastating for their standings and their runs as the season goes later on. Like, imagine like a Florida going 0-5, or excuse me, 0-2,
Right.
not getting a single point. Meanwhile, everyone else above them just crushes and cruises and gets a good chunk of points. That's huge.
Yeah, I agree. This event for me is going to kind of create more of those separations. I think all season long we've been looking at kind of this not necessarily a fight back and forth. I mean, you had Atlanta FaZe on top at the beginning. Now with Chicago Huntsmen with their most recent tournament win, they're sitting pretty at number one. Dallas didn't had a bye week during the last event, so haven't seen them in a bit, but they've had like a solid showing. I mean, obviously they've won, and it's this weekend is going to determine a lot. I think not only for these other teams here at the top, but for Minnesota ROKKR as well. Minnesota ROKKR's had a great season so far until you look at about the halfway point. I mean, obviously when the season started, we as in Minnesota ROKKR went 2-0 on launch event weekend here in Minneapolis, and after that we started really we were making the semis regularly. We made the 2 grand finals, one on LAN, one online, so there was some consistency there. And then within the last 2 events, I don't know if you call it like a little bit of a slump, if there's just a meta change and the other teams' roster changes that are affecting their play. But it's been interesting to kind of see. There's a little bit of a duality here going on with Minnesota ROKKR this season.
There is, and shout out to Katie Bedford. She wrote an article that's on the CDL website.
Yes.
Right now. It's an interview with a Saint, I believe, and one of the things that is heavily discussed is the practice regimen that Minnesota has had, and how since the pivot to online, it has felt off. Right, it hasn't felt good, and again, Katie puts it in way better words than I do. I highly recommend going and reading the article. It's very well written, but I think it points to something that's very interesting there. And one of the things that came up, or that was a resounding theme in the interview, was the practice. Practice felt off. Practice was not as efficient. It was not as productive. And when you take a team like Minnesota that's been built, in my opinion, around being an intelligent team, like a very, what's the word I'm looking for, a thinking team, a very smart team, when you don't have as productive or as efficient of practices, and VOD review isn't as thorough as it can be, and you know, another thing that was mentioned in the article was the fact that they aren't together anymore. When you remove those layers from a team that's essentially built around that, yeah, that's gonna hurt a lot.
Yeah, I think the transition to the CDL being online, I don't want to say it hurt Minnesota ROKKR, but it definitely, like, we were on a high swing. Like, we were swinging upwards, we're trending upwards, we're getting a lot of momentum. Like I said, 2 grand finals appearances in a row. One of the most recent ones was on LAN. We upset Dallas and LA at that LAN event, the final LAN event that we had earlier this year. And from those grew a little bit of like an expectation. You know, we kind of started the season as like a lot of people looked at the roster and maybe didn't know fully the accolades or the understanding of what you said, that this team they're full of grinders. They're going to learn the game. They're going to practice well. And when the game first came out, you saw that. They were one of the teams that really picked things up fast. They were ahead of the curve. And I think riding that momentum from the beginning of the season into the midseason, the shift to online, them not being in person, obviously every day at the facility, that may have hurt them a little bit. And so now, you know, as far as that goes, where we're at now, we do have actually 4 of the Minnesota ROKKR players in Minnesota now playing at the headquarters. And that's important. It was just, I think, 2. Then there was 3 when Justin or Silly came back. And then Adam, a.k.a. GodRx, came back. And, you know, Asim, he's stuck up in Canada right now. Asim, we love you. We miss you. But he can't come back yet. But we're getting there, right? We went from just 2 people playing to now 4 people are, you know, obviously socially spaced and everything while they're playing their matches. And I think that's something that's going to help. It helps their practice, and it helps the actual environment. You know, when you can look over the person next to you in between a match or in between a map and listen and see them and hear them, like, it's better than just a team speak icon lighting up, right?
Well, and even like you could hash stuff out better, right? Like, it's a competitive environment and you're a team. It's not just business, right? It's there's more to it that goes into that. And when you are physically with somebody and you can hash that stuff out, and if there are differences that need to be worked through, it's just so much easier and it's so much more efficient to do that in person. So I do think I would argue that the biggest obstacle for Minnesota this season has not been the fact that they've had to play their matches online. I think it's been that they as a unit haven't been together, because that just has seemed from the beginning to be so fundamental for this squad.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely agree. I think now what this brings us to now is some of the guys are able to come back, which is awesome. Love having them here. Still haven't seen them because obviously I'm working from home and everything, but I feel their energy. It's in Minnesota. I'm giving them the energy for the weekend. I think it helps them to be in person. I think it helps with their preparation, and it just helps with that camaraderie aspect. And it sounds really corny, but these guys rely on each other and much more of a, oh, I hope he gets my trade on Call of Duty. It's, I know that, Jerome's going to be on time to practice. I'm just picking random names, but like I know this guy's here and we're here to do business. And of course, all of you would hope that all of the professional players in the league take it as seriously as our guys do, but I know not only our roster, but how our coaches take it. It's really serious for them, and they mean business when they come in every day.
Even now, there are fines that are being assessed if people are late. Talk about a commitment to the fundamentals and making sure you get the little things right. That's as poignant of a point as I've seen across any team in the CDL this season.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too now, so this is the shakeup that's happened mid-season, right? Is obviously moving online. We're catching a little momentum, but then we're halted, right? We actually go out 0-2 two weekends in a row. Actually, was it 0-2? Yeah, both weekends were
Yep.
0-2. Talk about
It was
tough.
1-2 and then 1-2 and then 0-2 if I'm not mistaken.
Yep,
Or
yep.
sorry, 0-2 and then 1-2, something like that.
It
Either
was
way, it wasn't good.
it wasn't good. It wasn't the Minnesota Røkkr that we'd known to
Right.
like have these expectations about. Because I think when we're looking at our team in Minnesota here, we're a little bit surprised at their performance at first, or at least a lot of, I wasn't because I helped build the roster, but like the people, the spectators, the fans are like, oh wow, we're kind of lit. Like I've never heard of
Yeah.
Alex. He's amazing. Oh wow, turns out ROKKR is indeed a top 5 player. Look at his stats. They're amazing. Like you have a world champion in Assyrian Assault. Assault was the MVP of champs less than 2 years ago. Like these guys are here to play, and I think now what we're seeing with the mid-season changes with the other teams' rosters and the move to online, there's been meta changes now. There's been spawn updates in the game. There's been new attachments banned for the different weapons in the game. We're not playing a different game. It's still going to be Call of Duty Modern Warfare, but there's like a new version that we're kind of going to see this weekend for the first time. And I'm wondering, don't have a lot of inside baseball on it, but I'm wondering if that's something that helps our team as well. A little bit of a change of the meta, slow the game down a little bit, and settle in.
Yeah, but potentially. And when you think about the teams that have successfully, dismantled Minnesota over the season, it's been the fast hitters, right? When Atlanta first went up against Minnesota, it wasn't pretty. Chicago has had their number every single time, and it's because of those fast hitters and the pace at which they play, which has given Minnesota the fits a number of different times. So I think that this does have the potential to kind of slow things down a little bit and prove to be a difference maker. I think another thing to consider is when you look at win rates, and this point will make sense in a minute. So let's go through the season real quick.
Yeah.
Launch weekend, 75% win rate. We've skipped week 2. Week 3, 50% win rate. Week 4, where we lost in the grand finals to Dallas, 55% win rate. And then another 50% win rate. And then something happens. Everything goes kaput, right? And then we drop to a 40% win rate and then a 27% win rate. So
You're
I think
talking about map win rates, just to be
yes,
clear.
yeah,
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
Sorry, thank you.
Yeah.
The changes that you've mentioned could prove to be exactly what Minnesota needs. Something has to give, though, for the ship to be turned around. Because if you look at that trajectory that I just walked us through, it's not good.
Yeah, I mean definitely it's much more than, oh yeah, it's online, so that's why. I don't think that's the right attitude to take with it. I think you see this every year with Call of Duty. The new Call of Duty comes out, everyone's hype. Everyone's trying to learn it. Certain teams, certain players learn it faster than others, slower. The metas kind of ebb and flow, and they go back and forth. And I think we got the other teams caught up. They made some changes. They caught up, and then we didn't adjust fast enough, seemingly in mid-season. And now we actually, there's a I think, a pretty decent meta change recently that gives us the opportunity to, okay, let's grind this, let's learn it. This may cater to our play style, and let's see how it goes. And speaking of see how it goes, obviously we're live here on the Minnesota ROKKR YouTube channel. Make sure to subscribe, hit like on the stream or the video. Really appreciate that. We're here getting hyped up before the actual COD League YouTube goes live for the Minnesota home series this weekend. So super, super excited to watch the matches with you guys. I'll be in the Minnesota ROKKR Discord chatting with people and watching the matches and stuff. It's going to be a good time. But yeah, make sure to get your snacks ready, get cozy, get settled in, because the mainstream is going to start up soon. We wanted to make sure we broke a couple things down here and got a little nerdy with it before it started. Doug, so we talked about the difficulty of this weekend, because not only are we, I mean, as we just illustrated, we're in a little bit of a down angle of the season. We need to pop back up. We need to rebound. But wow, what a weekend to try and rebound when you have the top 5 teams in the league at your event and you square off against Dallas Empire first. For you, your first impressions of Minnesota ROKKR versus Dallas Empire today, what do you think happens in this match?
I might be wrestling with a little bit of recency bias here. So my guttural reaction is this is a really hard matchup,
right?
For Minnesota. It looked like from the last time these two teams met, which was the Dallas home series, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep, the online series.
Yeah, both teams have had very different trajectories, right? Dallas has really fine-tuned. They've gotten better week over week. They've had tournament wins, and as has been well documented, Minnesota's trajectory since then has been one of a negative slope. So I think off the cuff, that's a very difficult matchup in my opinion. But when I remove that aside, or when I set that to the side, this matchup should work, right? Let's talk about the 2 times Minnesota has played Dallas. It's a 1-1 record. The first time, the time that Minnesota lost to them, it went all the way to Game 5.
The most epic match of the year so far, by the way, at LA, Minnesota ROKKR versus Dallas in the finals. Most epic match of the year.
Hands down. And when I look at those two things, it's hard for me to not think that these two teams match up well. So if I remove recency bias, if I forget about what's happened the last 2 weeks or so, this is a really close matchup, and I wouldn't be surprised if it goes to Game 5. The interesting thing is, and we can jump to that more in a minute, the victor of this match, it's not like they get a prize at the end of this. They need to go likely play Atlanta.
Yeah.
What kind of win is that?
It's like you're starting on Sunday morning on a Friday night for a Call of Duty tournament. It's gonna be wild, man. And I think like let's bring it up then. So let's look at the bracket. Let's look at how the heck do we get to the finals? Not only just Minnesota ROKKR when I say we, but like anybody who's gonna make it to the finals. How do they get there? If we pull up the bracket here in round 1 there, we've got Seattle Surge versus Atlanta FaZe. God, I could talk a lot about Seattle Surge. I'll keep it short. The GOAT, Damon Barlow, Karma, aka Karma, just retired. That's how you know it's been a rough year, when one of the most adaptable Call of Duty esports athletes of all time is calling it quits. You hate to see it, but honestly, I'm happy for him. If he did mention on Twitter he feels it's the right decision, and it was his choice. But you look at that team Surge, who's super struggling. FaZe, hot. I think I don't even know how Surge wins a map there. So that's my prediction there. Is there they go through. For our match,
I'd agree.
For the Minnesota ROKKR Dallas Empire match, obviously, listen, I'm a part of Minnesota ROKKR. I'm almost always going to predict them to win, but it's going to be tough if we do. I do think that we have what it takes to beat the Dallas Empire, but I also think that, I mean, we've said it. I hate to sound redundant, but the top 5 teams in the league are playing this weekend, and they all have what it takes. So I'm just excited to see, because Dallas Empire actually had a bye week at the last event. An extra week had to pass because of the delay of this event. So Dallas Empire has actually had a lot of off time as far as tournaments go. I'm excited to see how that changes, and then obviously we talked about the meta change, if that's going to affect anything. I think that we can beat the Empire. I'm going to say that we will. But yeah, then like you said, in the quarterfinals, then we'd be meeting up with FaZe, and that's a tough look in the first day of a tournament. What do you think, Doug, about Group A
Yeah.
there?
No, I agree. I think it's a group of death. It's stacked. It's whatever you want to call it. But at the end of the day, it's still three of the four top teams in one group. And I think much like the record against Dallas, Minnesota has shown that they can hang
Mm-hmm.
with Atlanta, and you
We
look at
beat
that on
them.
paper.
We
Yeah,
we beat them
yeah, you don't
on
just hang.
land. The first
Mm-hmm.
team to beat Atlanta FaZe this year when they were hot. We beat them
Mm-hmm.
on land.
Yeah, and it looked good. And both times these two teams have played, they've gone the distance as well. So
Yep.
much like the Dallas thing, these two teams match up well.
Yep.
So it again, if you and this has been the prevailing theme across social media and armchair analysts and what have you, people are very heavily favoring both of those squads over Minnesota
Yep.
in both matchups, right? If those two teams were to play, and I don't know that it's as clear cut. Right, I don't think it's as clear cut as people are making it out to be, and again, it's because when I remove the last 3 weeks, these three teams, they all match up really well, and I don't think the gap between those is as big as it can be. Now, good against good, I think it can go either which way.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. It's gonna be absolutely crazy. I think, FaZe gets through. We would play them if we got through Dallas. We'd play them. I do think that we could like if we beat Dallas on Friday, so we're coming in hot into Saturday. That's huge. I think we could keep the momentum going against FaZe. And I think that we could beat them. It's hard to say. It's hard to make predictions about a team that I want to win so bad. So it's tough for me, Doug. Keep me in check. But I think that we could beat them and get to the semifinals. And even if we didn't, let's say FaZe gets through, we get through, go down to knockout round 2 there for Group A. We'd likely meet Surge. It's no offense, Surge, but we're well on our way. And then, we're looking at the semifinals versus, we'd have to start looking at Group B now, because Group B, here are the matchups. We got Gorillas, Los Angeles Gorillas versus Toronto Ultra. Toronto, listen, it's going to sound bad, because we did just, Minnesota Røkkr did just lose to them, but they have improved drastically. They've finally started to churn a little bit as a team. So I'm interested to see that matchup, but I think that Ultra takes that with ease. And then Huntsman versus Mutineers. Mutineers seems fractured to me ever since they won their event. It seems like they haven't been the same team. They had that team change with Pristini going over to Huntsman. So I think Huntsman takes that pretty easy. I think Huntsman gets out of this group pretty easily and moves on. What do you think, Doug?
I think given the beginning scenario that you painted, which I agree to be, and again, totally unbiased, even though there's Røkkr stuff here and here.
Hey, Doug's
totally
repping, but he's unbiased, all right?
The way I likely see this weekend, or the tournament bracket playing out, is Minnesota beats Dallas 3-2. Minnesota loses to Atlanta 3-1. Minnesota beats Seattle 3-1. And then they play Chicago.
Whew.
In the semifinals.
No matter what way you cut it, it's a tough tourney, man.
Yep. And look, so this is what I mentioned earlier at the beginning of the show. We're going to learn a whole lot about Minnesota this weekend, because the story of Minnesota has been one of two chapters, right? It's been, where the heck did this team come from? These guys are shocking the world. Who the heck are these guys? They're beating Atlanta. They're going toe-to-toe with Dallas, and they're beating Dallas 2 finals appearances in a row. When are they going to get over the hump? They have it in them, blah, blah, blah. That's one side, right? Like, that's the really pretty side.
That's what I've been thinking this whole time. You just illustrated all my thoughts, Doug.
and then there's the last 2 weeks, right? And you can talk about online, you can whatever, all these circumstances, the results are still the results.
Yep.
At the end of the day. So when we look at this weekend, there's no better time for Minnesota to show what they're made of, because this isn't just Minnesota and then the bottom of the pecking order and Minnesota is expected to win. And if it's very similar to the last event, it's more of a problem. If they don't perform well given the field this weekend, it's going to be good against good. And here's the thing that I think we'll learn this weekend. From the very beginning of the season, there was, it's the top 4. and then the field, right? It's the Atlantas, the Dallases, the Chicagos, and then Minnesotas, and then the field. When you look at the statistics, it seems to me, again, unbiased, that there's a top three. And then Minnesota's like, am I up? Am I down?
Knocking on the door, but
yeah,
not getting let in.
Yeah, like where do I fit? This weekend needs to be the weekend that Minnesota makes a statement and says, we do belong, right? Because you're beating good, right? Like
Yeah.
it's not beating up on the to be blunt on the bad teams. You're playing the best of the best. You've got to deliver here.
Yeah, and to me, deliver means a little bit different this weekend than others. Probably biased, but if, like, let's say Minnesota ROKKR doesn't win the Minnesota home series, I'm okay with that. But it depends on what happens in these matches. Do we look good against Dallas but end up losing? Do we make it to phase and get mollywopped, or are we competitive? I think that's what's going to tell us a lot. But at the end of the day, the leaderboards and the standings don't care about how good you looked. It's all you get 10 points for a win. And that's what's going to be most exciting to me, Doug, this weekend, is seeing how these top 5 teams fight for those points, who comes out on top, and where we land. I'm really excited to watch the event. That's going to be all for the pre-show. Doug, that went really fast. We just talked a lot about COD, and it was really nice. I'm really excited for this weekend. Thank you, Doug, for joining me. I appreciate you.
Of course. Again, thank you for having me. I'm sure as soon as we get off the call, we're going to sit around and talk more Call of Duty for 30 minutes anyway.
Absolutely.
So it'll be fine.
We'll be looking at vetoes and getting hyped. Anyway, if you guys don't know, you should know from watching this. We're right up before the Minnesota home series starts. It's actually going to be airing live on the COD League YouTube channel. The link will be down in the description. Go show love to the stream. Like I said at the beginning, the Minnesota ROKKR home series is a fundraising event in honor of George Floyd. Minnesota ROKKR is raising money to stop police brutality and support rebuilding efforts in the devastated areas of Minneapolis and St. Paul. Please check out rokkr.gg/donate to learn more about Campaign Zero and the other local groups that your donation will support if you choose to. There's also a list of other social justice organizations that you could help on a local or national level should you wish to make a contribution. Again, that's rokkr.gg/donate. Appreciate any support. Make sure to show out in the COD League stream. Give the ROKKR support, and we will be in the Discord as always. I'll be typing and getting hype with you guys about the matches. See you guys there. Anyway,